We continue with our Raiders X Factor conversation because now ESPN's Mina has chimed in. You'll hear what she has to say, plus a whole lot more on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're giving us a look on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show grows each and every day because of your support and because of my man, Ari. Ari does a great job each and every day getting us up on YouTube. We're looking good. We're sounding good. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And it's not because of me. It's because of him. Shout out Ari on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. As always, we get your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3. Plenty of feedback that we've been getting throughout a bunch of different subjects that we have. And love it. Love all the calls. Love all the texts. Going to get as many in as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, a conversation that I had on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Wednesday, was about 2023 breakout players who can keep that going in 2024. What do I mean by that? You'll hear it coming up, segment number 2 in today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, we deep dive into that X Factor conversation as Mina has started to chime in as well. We'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show. And it's funny, Mina Kimes from ESPN, she has her own show, The Mina Kimes Show. She was on with Greg Rosenthal. And it's funny, as much as we talked about X Factors here, maybe she's been listening to the Locked On Raiders podcast. I don't know. Kay Adams listens to the show, right? That's how I became a guest on Kay Adams' show, Up and Adams, is because she's actually listened to the show, hit me up before and said, hey, you have some really good information. Want to come on to the show? Yeah, cool. That's how it shook out. So maybe Mina Kimes from ESPN heard the show, heard all the great conversation that we've had about the Raiders' X Factors and who they could potentially be. Of course, we had that conversation with Pro Football Focus as well. And she decided to bring it to her show on Wednesday. So I just happened to see this floating around. Her and Greg Rosenthal were talking about the Raiders and who their X Factor could be. Here's Rosenthal and Mina Kimes' selection for the Raiders' X Factor. Here's a spoiler alert. It's the same guy. Check it out.
I'm going to go Jack Jones.
I have Jack Jones.
Okay. Is Jack Jones that dude? Is he a real dude? What a bizarre start to his career. Yeah. His last 6 games, PFF had him as a top 5 corner. There was obviously that blowout game where he just made the insane interception against the Chargers. But I thought the talent was there, and then he was awesome as a rookie with the Patriots. I thought he was going to be an ascending big-time player for them, but he had a team suspension. They cut him. And when he landed in Vegas, they sort of just suddenly had their best cornerback on the roster off of waivers and maybe a high-level starter. It's kind of bizarre.
The interception he had in the Chargers game is one of the best interceptions I've ever seen in my life.
Yes. He made some plays as a rookie, too, on passes defense. And with the Patriots, it was just wow, this guy is special. You kind of can't teach what he has.
The ceiling, this is why I chose him, is the highest of any DB on this roster. And the reason I went defense is I was thinking about what does success look like for the Raiders. I think we're obviously we're pretty low on the quarterback position there. I think you want to see them build on what they did defensively last year, which is arguably why Antonio Pierce, head coach of this team. This is a defense that finished 4th in weighted DVOA.
That's wild.
Behind the Ravens, the Jets, and the Browns, the teams we think of as having elite defenses, ahead of the Niners, the Cowboys, the Steelers. That's pretty shocking. And when I look at the depth chart, it's very good front now, but corner is it's the single biggest question mark outside of quarterback on this roster. If Jack Jones can continue playing like that, this could be a really good defense.
Jack Jones was their selection. And it's funny listening to the breakdown. And how about the surprise in Mina Kimes' voice when she was talking about the Raiders' DVOAs for their defense rankings being number 4. They're like, yeah, wait, hold on. They were right behind, the Ravens, a team like that, right? They were ahead of the 49ers. They were ahead of the Cowboys, right? They were behind those teams that are all expected to have big-time defenses like the Cleveland Browns and others, right? And so there was a little bit of surprise and even a little hesitation in their voice to admit that, wow, the Raiders defense is really good. But you see the way that they focus in on Jack Jones and what he brings to the table. And it's funny, Greg Rosenthal said it, the Raiders all of a sudden picked up their best corner and got him off of waivers. Right? I mean, that just doesn't happen very often. And it was a blessing when the Patriots waived him and Antonio Pierce went out on a limb and said, hey, we need to bring this guy in. Champ Kelly didn't want to do it. And AP pounded the table and said, hey, I'll put my job on the line that this guy is going to be the guy. And he proved to be the guy. In 7 games, had 2 interceptions and 2 touchdowns. And just really brought a whole different style, whole different swagger, whole different attitude to that cornerback room, right? The secondary in general, and gave that defense really what they needed. So, I don't think, as much as we've talked about the X factor, I don't think there's been too many times where people have said Jack Jones. And I do look at him as a guy who's going to be a big-time playmaker, but for some reason, I hadn't really singled him out as a potential X factor, but it makes a lot of sense with what they had to say. So I would have no problem rolling with that, especially with the addition of Christian Wilkins, and we all know what that defensive line is going to look like. The secondary should be better. Of course, there's going to be a question of who's across from Jack Jones. We've had plenty of those conversations here on the show. We know what Nate Hobbs brings to the table from the nickel corner, the slot position, but who's going to be across from Jack Jones? But I really enjoyed what Mina Kimes had to say, what Greg Rosenthal had to say about Jack Jones and what he brings to the table as what they believe could be the Raiders' X factor. And, just to deep dive a little bit further into Jack Jones, and I just had this sound on yesterday's show, but when we had an opportunity on Tuesday to catch up with a few of the assistant coaches, one of those coaches was Ricky Manning Jr. He's the cornerback coach, and he was asked about Jack Jones, and he went on and on about what Jack brings to the table.
Jack, man, Jack's a character, man. Love it. Hey, it's funny because my wife always discussing. He kind of look like Nick Cannon to me, like he has that, what I'm saying, like everybody loves Nick Cannon, right? Like that's what Jack Jones is. Everybody loves him, he's a good character guy. He's hungry, but also he believes in second chances and being able to be here and with people that care about you. So I think it's going to be a big year for him because of those things, right? We're still working, we're still going, we're still grinding. That dude has some stuff in his legs that you just don't see. You know what I mean? Like I'm watching drills and I'm like, he covered that 5 yards in like 2 steps, like, you know what I mean? So he got some explosion stuff. He's a ball guy, which I love. I love guys that take away the ball. He can really do some special things. Once he locks in, he focuses. That dude can be pretty good.
So there's Ricky Manning Jr. just talking about Jack Jones and what he brings to the table. Talks about his athleticism, his feet, his quick feet, and again, that's something that you could just see when he's out there on the practice field. You could just see the way that he gets after it, the intensity he has in practice. I mean, he doesn't want any ball caught against him. He doesn't want any touchdowns to be given up. He's arguing calls. I mean, he's just getting after it. You can see the intensity. You can hear the enjoyment and excitement that he's having. You can hear him whenever he's on the field. He's just a guy that brings a lot to that Raiders secondary, and more importantly, that Raiders defense. And of course, AP goes way back with Jack Jones. Well, Marvin Lewis does as well. Marvin Lewis was there as an assistant coach at Arizona State. Of course, he knows Jack Jones really well. So Adam Hill from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and a lot of times from my sister station, ESPN Las Vegas as well, asked the question to Marvin Lewis when we met with him, not this week, but last week, and also asked about Jack Jones.
You talked about some of the players in the past, how they compared to Max Crosby. A guy like Jack Jones that will make a play and then tell you about how he made that play. What does that bring to kind of the rest of the defense?
We want to have some consistency of things, and, we're trying to iron Jackie out a little bit, all the time. He's a very talented player, and I've had the pleasure, as I told him again, Jack, it's been 5 years now. And let's move on. Let's move to step B. We're still on step A, but he's a very talented young man. He has a knack for making football plays. And, he just has that about him. And I think it's just learning, still in the process, learning to be a pro day in and day out. And I think that's important. And I think, but his teammates know what they're going to get out there on the field, and we just got to make sure we keep all of those things positive all the time. You know, I mean, I remember the end of the season, he made just a great play in the Denver game where he came across and tipped the ball in the end zone. The next play, he didn't move. You know, and that's the thing. It's you know, this is a tough. You play it. That's a position. It's the toughest position on the field. I mean, you got to cover a guy that you can't touch. He knows where he's going, and you can't touch him. Other than that, it's easy. You know.
There's Marvin Lewis right there answering Adam Hill's question about Jack Jones, and I love the laugh right there from Marvin. Just Jackie, we're going to try to smooth Jackie out. And look, he's got some edge to him. He really does. And I say it all the time. I'd rather have a guy that I have to say, hey, man, hey, Jack, we're going to need you to pull it back a little bit. We're going to need to rein you in a little bit, as opposed to, I need more. I need more. Come on, give me some more. Give me some more. It's a lot easier to rein someone in and try to pull them back a little bit than it is to try to actually push someone and tell them, get up off their shoulders and do something. I've always been that guy where people have told me, hey, Q, you're doing too much. You got to pull it back some. Okay, that's fine. That's better than having to try to, convince someone, hey, I need more. Give me more. You could be better than that. I need more effort from you. I need more attitude from you. Jack's got all that, and he's bringing that to that Raiders secondary. I really like that. And the final soundbite that I want you to hear here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast is actually from Jack Jones himself. We got an opportunity to catch up with him at OTAs last week and had a lot of good conversation, and he was asked a question about becoming a premier corner. I love this answer, and this is the only answer you can have if you're a cornerback in the National Football League and you're going to be successful. So check it out. Here's Jack Jones on having an opportunity to become a premier corner.
Does it motivate you at all to try to make that jump to solidify yourself as a premier corner in the league this season too?
I believe I'm a premier corner already myself. I'm not really worried about what y'all say. Respectfully, you know what I'm saying? I'm not really worried about what y'all say. But, I just go out there and play ball. My goal this year is to be the number 1 defense and make the playoffs and go farther in the playoffs than we did last year.
I love that answer. As soon as he said it, I got a big smile on my face. If you don't have that answer right there, if you don't go out and think you're the baddest dude in the land, then you've already lost. Right? A lot of you know that my son plays basketball. He's at Portland State right now, and I tell him all the time, and he's not quite as aggressive as me, right? He's a little bit, a little bit more quiet or whatever. He doesn't have that same approach that I do, where it's go, 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 but he's really damn good. But I tell him all the time, man, when you hit the court, you've got to be the baddest dude. You've got to have the attitude that you're the baddest dude out here on the court. Ain't nobody better than you. That's what Jack Jones has. He has that attitude, like you heard him say, I already think I'm a premier corner. I don't care what y'all think. And it was respectfully. He wasn't trying to be a jerk about it at all. And he can't think and care what we think, right? He's got to go out there, and when he's lining up against some of these premier wide receivers, he's got to believe he's the best corner in the league and that there ain't going to be no ball caught his way, right? When he's lining up and Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, he's got to think, I'm taking this ball to the house every time. That's what he's got to do. If he's going to continue to be that leader of that secondary, which I believe he can, then he's going to have to keep up with that mentality. And I have no doubt about Jack Jones, he'll have that mentality. And it's funny, his name's actually going to come up in segment number 2 as well. It was unplanned. Didn't know that I was even going to be talking about the X Factor, but when I heard Mina Kimes talking and I heard Greg Rosenthal talking on the Mina Kimes show, I thought, okay, this all ties together. So coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, breakout players from 2023 who I think could have continued success in 2024. That's coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the show, which is BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. It is one of the hardest things to do, but it's something that every one of us need to do. You're about to make a tough decision, whether that's about a career, a relationship, maybe a big move, whatever the case may be. Decisions come, and big decisions come in all kind of sizes, right? They can seem like something small, but they can really eat at you and really become something big. So sometimes you just need to sit it on down and talk with someone. Therapy could be the way to go. Therapy could be different for everyone. And a lot of us have a lot of big problems, right? Bigger than what our favorite sports team's doing. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about breakout players from 2023. And it's funny, I started this conversation on Raider Nation Radio 920 Unnecessary Roughness, my radio show, and I thought it was a really good one. So I wrote it down. I was like, man, I want to talk about this on the podcast. I had no idea I was going to deep dive into that X Factor conversation, and they kind of tie together. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And so that's how we roll here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So I want to deep dive into this conversation that I had, and I worded it: what breakout player from 2023 do you think will have continued success in 2024? Well, who was I considering to be a breakout player? I looked at Malcolm Kuntz. He had 8 sacks on the season. All of them came after Antonio Pierce became the interim head coach, right after November 1st. 8 sacks along the way. I looked at Robert Spillane, first year as a starter in the National Football League, 148 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 3 interceptions. I look at that as a breakout performance. Trayvon Merrick, lined up side by side with Marcus Epps, really started to understand the Patrick Graham defense, had 3 interceptions. He was tied with Robert Spillane to lead the team in interceptions with 3. Jack Jones, who we talked about in segment number 1 as the X Factor. He only played 7 games for the Silver and Black, had 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns in 7 games. That's very effective work right there. Zamir White, he took over for Josh Jacobs the last 4 games of the season. 4 games, 84 carries, 397 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and a touchdown. That's breakout action there the final 4 games. And then I was on the fence with this final guy, and I'm still on the fence with him. I had a couple people call in and say, yeah, he's a candidate for a breakout player, or he was, broke out in 2024 or 2023. He could potentially break out in 2024. That's quarterback Aiden O'Connell. Why do I say that? Because, yeah, he started after Antonio Pierce took over, but the final 5 games is what I looked at. 8 touchdowns to 1 interception, 100 completions, just over 1,000 yards, 1,026 yards for that final 5-game stretch. So I looked at that and said, was that his breakout moment, and could he carry that over to 2024? But again, I wasn't sure if that qualified. So I just kind of threw it out there and said, hey, if you think it does, cool, he could be part of the equation. If you don't think he qualifies, cool, not a problem, right? I'm not going to push the narrative on that one because I honestly am on the fence. I really don't know, but I just know the final 5 games for O'Connell was really good. Again, when you have 8 touchdowns and only 1 interception, 100 completions and over 1,000 yards in the final 5 games, I'll take that, right? Every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So you can make a decision on Aiden O'Connell, but I'll look at the other guys. And who I believe can carry it over from 2023 to 2024, really, I'm looking at the guys on defense. I mean, I really am. And obviously, the defense is what we all believe is going to be the heavy lifter, the one that's going to lead this Raiders team to whatever they do in 2024. It's going to be led by what they do defensively. But Malcolm Kuntz, I think that he has an opportunity to really be good. Right, so he'd be the first guy, as he was a guy that I talked about. Maybe the Raiders will go ahead and extend him a little sooner rather than later, right? Instead of making him wait as he's going into a contract year, you might want to go ahead and lock him up now since you know how much edge rushers are getting paid. But then again, you look at the contracts around the league, everybody's getting paid. So Kuntz had 8 sacks. I think that that's going to carry over in 2024, especially with the addition of Christian Wilkins. He makes everybody better, right? He's going to make Tyree Wilson better. He's going to make Malcolm Kuntz better. Hell, he's going to make Max Crosby better, and it's hard to make Max Crosby better. So I think Malcolm Kuntz has a great opportunity, especially with the way that he's so quick and able to get around the corner. He adds a couple more little tools to his tool belt. I think he's going to be really good. Robert Spillane, I think he's going to be pretty much, well, who he is, right? I mean, that was a really good season for him his first year, so maybe it's not quite as good. Who knows? But I feel pretty solid about him at the linebacker position. Trayvon Merrick, he's definitely in the contract year. I mean, all these guys, Kuntz, Spillane, Merrick, Jack Jones. Well, Jack Jones isn't in the contract year, but he could be. So Trayvon Merrick, I think that he could carry it over as well. Seems like he's very comfortable with what they've been doing defensively and just, kind of sliding back into that role. And having Patrick Graham now as a defensive coordinator for the 3rd year in a row, that's only going to help that guy. So I think that he can be that guy. And Jack Jones, I really feel comfortable, and it goes back to what I said about Malcolm Kuntz. The addition of Christian Wilkins is really going to help him. Again, I wasn't looking at Jack Jones as the X factor. Everyone knows I was talking about Trey Tucker as a potential X factor. Jack Jones, again, after Mina Kimes and Greg Rosenthal said that, it made sense, especially when they broke it down and talked about the Raiders' defense. It made sense that he could be the X factor, being that guy. I mean, being basically the number 1 corner, and they picked him up off of waivers. So I think that he's going to have many opportunities to make plays in 2024. The biggest key is they're going to have somebody that's really good across from him as well, so he actually gets an opportunity to make some plays. Because if you have someone on the other side that's not good at all, guess where the balls are going to go? over that way. They're not going to go Jack Jones' way, and so that's not going to really help the Raiders how they want it to help. I mean, yeah, you don't want you want him to be able to shut a guy out and not not get any catches, not give up any big plays, but you also want to give Jack Jones an opportunity to make plays, because what he's shown is that he can make plays. So the guys that I feel really comfortable that I think are going to carry over their breakout season that they had in 2023 to 2024, really, I don't want to say everybody because it feels like that's too easy of an answer. I'll just look at Kuntz and Jack Jones. I'll narrow it down to two. How about that? Kuntz and Jack Jones, I feel very comfortable with being guys that are going to carry over their play from 2023 to 2024. And I'm really excited to see Jack, only because he did 7 games with the Raiders in 2023. I want to see him over the course of a full season. That will be awesome, right? Spillane, I think he's going to be good. Merrick, I think he's going to be good. Zamir White, I would say him offensively, but the offensive line's got to come together, right? We've talked about that. I know Raider Eddie in Denver's talked about the offensive line quite a bit. He's skeptical if that's going to be good. And Aiden O'Connell's got to be able to be a good quarterback, right? He's got to be able to be a good, consistent quarterback, or even Gardner Minshew, whoever gets that quarterback job, because if he's not, then they're going to crowd the line of scrimmage and say, okay, we dare you to beat us with your arm. So we're going to stop the run game. And so then Zamir White won't really have an opportunity. But you got to tip the cap to him what he was able to do the last 4 games. 84 carries, 397 yards. It's almost 100 yards per game, right? And you'll take that. Almost 5 yards per carry and a touchdown. You want to see a couple more touchdowns, but what he did, again, a small sample size, it looks good. Now, can he do it over the course of an 18-week, 17-game season? That still remains to be seen. But again, if I had to pick 2 guys from the breakout player from 2023, and if they'll have continued success in 2024, I would feel comfortable saying Malcolm Kuntz and Jack Jones. What says you? 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider Podcast voicemail line. Your calls and texts are coming up next in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders Podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. The NBA Finals, they're getting started today. Stanley Cup Finals, they get started on Saturday. Looking forward to both. You want to go to them? You can. Gametime will get you in. You want tickets, even last-minute tickets, they will hook you up. You want the best seats in the house? They'll hook you up. You want to see your seats before you actually buy them? You got it. They will hook you up. They've got so many great deals. Gametime is the place to go. You can get last-minute deals and save up to 60% off of buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever the case may be. I'm talking about the finals in Stanley Cup and the NBA, but really, you can go to anything, and Gametime can get you there. What you need to do right now is take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, that's LOCKEDONNFL, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from Jacob in Hanford. He's calling to talk about AP and what this team needs to do this year, or what his team needs to do this year as he's the head coach. Here he is, Jacob in Hanford.
What's up, Q? This is Jacob from Hanford. I wanted to talk about AP. I wanted to ask you a question about his expectation this year, and more than that, okay, so I'll preface it this way. No matter how well AP does, there's going to be haters. And no matter how poorly he does, there's going to be people who are just supporting him. Maybe not if he goes 0-16 or 0-17 rather, but you get my point. There's a lot of people that love AP and there's a lot of people that just really don't like him. And so my point is with Mark Davis, because he's the guy that matters. He's the guy that counts with all of this. With AP, what's the expectation this year, and how poorly would AP have to perform in order to be on the hot seat? Because I'm of the opinion that the realistic outcome for this year is us finishing about 8-9 again. You know, maybe 9-8 if we're, things swing our way and we get lucky. But 7-10 even. If that were to happen, I don't think Mark Davis even has a hint of maybe I should let this guy go. I think that he's going to look at 7-10 with AP and be like, okay, it makes sense. They're still struggling to find a guy who's going to be their solid QB. But on the contrary, if we got 10 wins, say that's a thing that we do this year. That would be a big accomplishment. How well does AP have to perform in order to be up for a extension, in order to be up for, a big bonus, so to speak? What does AP have to do this year to get on Mark's good side contractually, and how poorly can he perform while still staying in Mark's good graces? If you let me know, Q, appreciate everything you do. You take it easy. Go Raiders.
Jacob, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And I think really when it comes down to it, I think it's a matter of what it looks like, right? I think we'll learn a lot about the expectations based off the way the team performs, how prepared they look, how competitive are they. Obviously, games that, they win, that obviously matters. But it's just, I think it's a gut thing, right? How is the locker room? What's the culture like? Is the culture that AP, and put in place, is it still working? Right? Does he still have control of the locker room? Right? Is there a lot of eye rolling? Or are people not excited by his mentality, the way that he his leadership skills? Like, I think there's a lot that goes into it. So I can't really put well, you have to win this many games to be able to stick and stay as the head coach. I think the plan is for him to be around for the long haul. He's just got to continue to prove. I mean, it's what it is. He says it all the time. It's a production-based business. You've got to win or you're going to be gone. Right? When you get hired as a head coach, you get hired to get fired. Right? So he's going to go in, and his expectations are to win games, and win more games. It's really, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to like hot seats, it's going to be a gut thing. Right? It's just it all depends on what it looks like, especially now that it's his. It's not like he's picking it up mid-season and trying to save it. It's his. He gets to start and he gets to finish. What does it look like along the journey? Well, that remains to be seen. I think it's going to look very good, but just because I think that doesn't mean anything. We'll see what happens when it's all said and done. But thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Ant Dog in the ATL. It says, hey, Q, it's your boy Ant Dog Raider from the ATL. I want to jump in on the X Factor conversation. I think Nate Hobbs will be the guy this season. His versatility of being able to play outside, inside, and the slot will be invaluable as long as he's healthy. A high-ceiling player who hasn't reached his full potential. Quick side note, looking at the press conference with the available coaches, there's an excitement around this team internally that shows. It doesn't seem contrived, but an organic excitement of coaches and players who want to be Raiders. I hope it translates to the field. As always, love the show. Keep doing what you're doing, and you will always have a listener in me. Raiders. That's Ant Dog Raider from the ATL. Thanks so much. And it's funny, Mina Kimes and Greg Rosenthal said that Jack Jones is going to be the X factor for the Raiders, and you said Nate Hobbs. And it's funny, going back to what Ricky Manning said, you're talking about coaches at the press conferences, going back to what Ricky Manning said on Tuesday when we got an opportunity to catch up with him, when he talked about Nate Hobbs, he basically made it sound like Nate Hobbs is the X factor and the most important dude on the defense. Matter of fact, if you didn't hear what Ricky Manning had to say about Nate Hobbs, here it is right here. Check it out.
Nate is the key that unlocks our defense. All right, that nickel spot is very special. That star spot is very special, and being able to play inside and outside is a unique characteristic to have. Just like Michael Carter with the Jets were last year, a pivotal piece to that defense. That's what Nate Hobbs is. That's what the star position has become. He's the key to unlock our defense, and he's great at it, right? And he's going to continue to ascend, and with his growth, our defense grows. All right, our defense grows, and it allows PG, our coordinator, to call certain things because he can trust that Nate can get it done and get it communicated to everybody, and we can work well together.
So I guess there's an argument to be said that Nate Hobbs could be the X factor, but I like where you're going with that. Again, kind of caught my attention when Ricky Manning said that Nate Hobbs was the most important guy on the defense, and for everything that you said, right? He could play outside, he could play inside, he could play the slot, he can do this, that, and the other. He's a football player. He can line up all over the field. So really good call, my man. Definitely appreciate you. And like I said, that caught my attention when Coach Manning said that Nate Hobbs was that guy. Up next, got a call from St. Louis Raider. He's calling to talk about the new kickoff rule and what he's seen with the new kickoff rule up close and personal. Here he is, St. Louis Raider.
Hey, what's up, Q? St. Louis Raider. Hey, Wednesday you were talking about what you were seeing with the special teams at OTA. I just wanted to say that I'm stoked for this new kickoff. I've had season tickets to the Battlehawks here in St. Louis. I've seen this kickoff in person, and I'm stoked on it. I think it's sweet. I think with Trey Tucker back there, you said Lavi was looking nice. I think they could have us sitting pretty on these kick returns. I think this is going to turn it into a play that you have to sit there and watch. Last season and before, the kickoff's kind of been a play that you could get up, refill your drink, maybe hit the bathroom. Now I think we're going to be glued to our seats. Raider Nation, if you guys haven't checked this play out, get on YouTube. Check it out. It's sweet. Appreciate you, Q.
Thanks so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you, and I do believe that it has a chance to be a very big play now, right? It's not that same boring play that it used to be, and it's not just for the Raiders. There's an opportunity for a big play for every team across the National Football League. So that means not only can the Raiders make a big play, they can give up a big play. So that's why there's so much focus on special teams, even in OTAs. They are really grinding and working away at it because they have to. Because if not, they're going to give up a big play. They're going to get some big plays, but they're going to give up some big plays, and that's what they don't want to do. So you're right. I mean, it comes from the XFL, the UFL, what's going on, the way that they changed up the kicking rules, and they implemented it into the NFL with a few little tweaks of their own. But it does look like it has the potential to be a really big play. Thanks so much for that call. Do appreciate you. Got time for one more text. This one comes from Raider Jason in the 304. He says, "Hey, Q. Raider Jason from the 304, here are a few options to add to the recent discussion. Breakout X factors. 1, Zamir White. We all better hope he has a breakout year or things could get questionable early. JJ leaving felt like left a huge hole to get filled. Let's go Zeus. 2, Trey Tucker. His speed is a game changer. If he improves on the route running and foot placement, look out. I'm excited to possibly see him with the new kickoff rule also. I'll stop right there. Zamir White, that would be great to have him have a breakout season. I talked about that in segment number 2, the final 4 games of the year. He did really good. Can he carry that over through 18 weeks and 17 games? And Trey Tucker is a guy that I had picked as an X factor because of that speed, right? If as long as his hands and his footwork is right, he could be a really good player. And I did see him on the kickoff, when they were practicing on Tuesday. And, man, he caught that ball on the fly and he was gone. So, yeah, he could end up being a game changer on the kickoff as well. So we'll go on with Raider Jason in 304. His text, he said, potentially extension candidates, all homegrown dogs. 1, Hobbs, big priority. Top slot corners are hard to come by. DBs win games. I say that all the time. Then he said, Kuntz, pass rushers are valuable. He's a great bookend across from Mad Max. 3, Merrick, he has developed into a very good safety. He looked the part down the stretch, and the sky's the limit. Again, DBs win games. Sign them soon to lock that defense down. As always, love the show. Thanks for all the great coverage. Just win, baby, and go Raiders. That's 3 good selections right there. I would have no problem if the Raiders decided to roll out and get 3 contract extensions for those guys, Hobb, Kuntz, and Merrick, right? Of course, the defense, again, is going to be the leader of this team. Those guys are all playmakers. Right, Hobbs talked about him being the X factor, talked about him being the leader of the defense, the guy who makes the defense go. Kuntz, like you said, across from Mad Max is a big deal, right? And especially if Tyree Wilson could come along as well. And Trayvon Merrick in the back end making plays like he did in 2023 makes a lot of sense. I would have no problem if they signed all of those guys, one or all of those guys, to contract extensions immediately. Thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Got a call from Raider Cisco and a couple more texts that we'll get to on tomorrow's show. We'll have more news and notes, of course. We'll have plenty of conversation as we close out the week really strong and get ready for the weekend. Can't believe it's that time of the week already, but that's how it is here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So the weeks keep rolling along, and we love every minute of it. Sooner rather than later, we'll be in Costa Mesa talking about training camp. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.